Distinguished guests, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you all for joining us today at CCG VIP Luncheon. The CCG VIP Luncheon series is initiated and hosted by Center for China and Globalization, CCG. This event aims to share China's latest development with embassies in China, international organizations, chambers of commerce, multinational corporations, and academic experts. It is a high-end platform for international exchange, providing insights into China's development and exploring global cooperation opportunities. Today's luncheon will center on this year's 2 sessions, with the discussions addressing key points, including the comprehensive green transformation of economic and social development, technological progress, rural revitalization, social governance, and infrastructure development. We will explore related issues and conduct the analysis together. We are honored to have 5 distinguished panel discussants, including 2 CPPCC members and 1 MPC member, who just concluded their 2 sessions. Will share their insights and perspectives with us. Before we start, let's take a moment to acknowledge some of our special guests and VIPs who are here. We have invited diplomats from nearly 30 countries, including 18 ambassadors, along with representatives from international organizations, business councils, and the media. They are Ambassador of Austria, Ambassador of Barbados, Ambassador of Belgium, Ambassador of Croatia, Ambassador of Estonia, Ambassador of Greece, Ambassador of Israel, Ambassador of Indonesia, Ambassador of India, Ambassador of Iceland, Ambassador of Italy, Ambassador of Latvia, Ambassador of Luxembourg, Ambassador of Malta, Ambassador of Pakistan, Ambassador of Portugal, Ambassador of Romania, and Ambassador of New Zealand. We also have diplomats from various embassies, including Embassy of Brazil, Delegation of the European Union to China, Embassy of Germany, Embassy of Hungary, Embassy of Japan, Embassy of Norway, Embassy of Russia, Embassy of the United Kingdom. We also have representatives from various international organizations and business council, including the representative from IMF, OECD, UNICEF, and Canada-China Business Council, Danish Chamber of Commerce in China, US-China Business Council, and the medias, international medias, including Kyodo News, NBC News. On behalf of Center for China and Globalization, I extend a sincere welcome and heartfelt thanks to all the experts and guests here today. Next, I would like to invite our distinguished panelists and our today's host. First, I would like to invite the former counselor of the State Council and the founder of the Center for China and Globalization, Dr. Huiyao Wang, to moderate today's panel. And we would like to invite Mr. Bai Chongen, member of the National Committee of CPPCC and Dean of School of Economics and Management, Tsinghua University. Mr. Jing Li, member of the National Committee of the CPPCC, Vice President, Southern University of Science and Technology, Director, UNESCO, Ichin. And Mr. John Coolidge, Executive Vice Chancellor, Duke Kunshan University, and John Dubus, Professor of Practice. And Mr. Tang Ming, former Counselor of the State Council, Vice Secretary General of China Development Research Foundation, Vice President of CCG, and Mr. Tian Xuan, delegate to the 14th National People's Congress and Dean of National Institute of Financial Research, Tsinghua University. Let's welcome the 5 experts with a warm round of applause. Welcome.
Okay, so great. We have 5 fabulous discussion panelists today. So let's we start our discussion. While you continue enjoying your meal, let me first give a little bit highlight of what we're going to talk about, because I think CCG VIP launching has been launched since last year, and we had a 10 launching actually last year. So this is our first event for this year. And we thought what would be the good subject is just the 2 sections just finished. And it looks like this time it's highly watched, not only in China, but also in the world as well. And we have, I think we have gathered 8 days for 5,000 members, 3,000 deputy to NPC and 2,000 CPPCC members at a great hall of people. And you have 3,000 journalists who cover these 2 sections, 2,000 from China and 1,000 from internationally countries, and Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan. So it's quite a spectacular annual political exercise that China has to build up the consensus, restore the confidence, particularly after COVID, and also, of course, march on to the years ahead. At this 2 section, we know that China has achieved 5% of the GDP growth, and then it's going to continue to be another 5% for 2025. So the format today is that I would like to have our panelists to talk about their takeaway from this big event. And so I would like to get our the representative who just freshly out of this conference. First, I'd like to have Professor Bai Chong-en. He's the member of National Committee of the CPPCC, and he's also the Dean of the School of Economics and Management, Tsinghua University, and also the Vice Chairman of the 13th Executive Committee of All China Federation of Industry and Commerce. So, Professor Bai, so I'd like to start with you. So I know you just rushed from Tsinghua to this luncheon. What do you think of the most impressive takeaway for you for these 2 sections? So we'll probably let the 3 members of NPC and CPP share. Maybe we'll start with each one, have a 5-6 minutes of going around, and then we'll go for maybe some Q&A, and then we'll open up for our audience, ambassadors, and all the representative at this luncheon. So I'll start with you.
Thank you, Huiya, for the introduction, and I'm very glad and honored to have this opportunity to share my thoughts about the 2 sessions. As you may know, 2 of the perennial themes of these 2 sessions are innovation and internal demand. And this year, the order of these 2 themes is different from the past years. In the past, innovation was always listed as the top priority. And this year, the order changed. Internal demand, especially household consumption, became the top priority among the list of important works for the new year, for year 2025. And I will talk about innovation first because it's an easier job to do. Since the Chinese New Year to now, there are a lot of good news on the front of innovation from Chinese businesses and DeepSeek and a number of others. So people are very impressed. So I think this year, the mood of the 2 sessions are more positive because people are becoming more optimistic about Chinese enterprises' capabilities for innovation. In the past, Chinese firms we're doing very well in innovation in business models. For example, all these internet platform companies, they have been doing really well, but their main innovation is their business models. But this time around, there are some innovation in some of the core technology in the areas of AI and etc. So these are very encouraging news. But still, people are hoping for more innovation. And another question came up. Despite of these innovation, the economy is still facing a lot of challenge. And I think the question is the top priority issue, that's internal demand. And of different areas of internal demand, household consumption is the most important one, listed as the top item, but it's also the most difficult of policy objectives to achieve. For Chinese local governments, they have a lot of levers to pull if they want to promote investment. They can give a lot of support to enterprises to promote investment. But there are fewer levers to pull to promote consumption. A lot of the conventional levers, conventional policy recommendations have been taken. For example, strengthen Social Security. Chinese government fiscal spending on Social Security has been increasing rapidly. And for example, for the pension plan, for employment-based pension, this year fiscal subsidy of employment pension is about 2.7 trillion yuan. It's not a small number, and that number has been increasing in the past. And subsidy for health insurance has also been increasing. These are for employment-based insurance programs. Then government spending on residents' insurance, either health insurance or pension insurance, spending has also been increasing. So some achievement has been made in terms of household consumption. Between the year of 2009 and 2015, the share of household consumption in the economy were rising. Then the rising trend stagnated. So now it stays at around 39%. So a lot of the policy recommendations by experts have been implemented, but it's not achieving further improvement. Last year, consumption as a share of GDP basically stayed the same as the year before. So what can we do? And if you read the government report, you may notice this very technical, and you wouldn't think it should be there, this item. That is to improve the statistics of household consumption. It's written in the work report. Why is that? That's very much related to the effort to boost consumption. And in Chinese economy, local governments play many roles. And as I suggested earlier, they have many levers to pull to boost investment. They also have very strong incentives to promote investment. Normally, their tenure is like 3 years. For those who serve longer, maybe 5 years. In 3 to 5 years, they need to achieve visible improvement in the economy because they are evaluated by their economic performance. What can you do to achieve visible improvement in 3 years? Make investment. During the process of investment, you increase domestic demand, local demand, and after investment, you increase the production capability. Maybe in the longer run, these investments are not very efficient, but that's the business of their successors. So their tenure would have been finished by the time the investment becomes a problem. Becomes a problem in a sense that supply exceeds demand. But for household consumption, they don't really have, first of all, there are fewer levers to pull. Secondly, they don't have strong incentives to do that. Their tax revenue is very much tied to local production. Even though value-added tax technically is a tax on consumption, but it's collected at the point of production, not at the point of consumption. So local governments have very strong incentive to promote local business investment because that increases their tax revenue. So there are many areas where local governments find strong incentives to promote investment. About household consumption, we don't even have local data on household consumption. There are some data, but these data are imperfect. For example, for e-commerce, it becomes consumption, but it's accounted at the location of the e-business headquarters. It's not accounted at the destination of the consumption goods. So we have very poor statistical system for household consumption. We don't have any reliable data on local household consumption. At the national level, there is very good data, but with a time lag. But at local level, there isn't. So this problem is there. So we have been working really hard to promote the idea of making household consumption the main performance indicator of local governments, but the condition is not there because we don't have statistics to implement that change of priority. So that's why this time the government work report emphasizes this seemingly very technical area, but I believe the implications are very profound. And there are other suggestions, other plans in the government work report. One of them is to promote the development of services sector. Because in household consumption, the share of service consumption has been increasing. And if you compare Chinese household consumption with the consumption patterns of more advanced economies, it's the service consumption that's lacking in China. So there, not enough emphasis was paid before, but now I think policymakers are realizing how important this area is. So there are a lot of plans to promote service consumption production, service consumption supply. Hopefully we can, by these measures, by changing the way local governments are evaluated, by putting more emphasis on the production of household services, we can boost internal demand in a significant way. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Thank you, thank you, Chuan. Excellent summary of what your takeaway from these two sections. I agree with you totally. You mean this domestic consumption, where first we need a number for that to really collect, accurately measure that, but also furthermore we need to really become a performance criteria for all the government, all levels, 4 or 5 levels, top to bottom. So that's excellent target I think you're having. We're also setting the 14th, finishing the 14th 5 years plan and getting into the 15th 5 years plan. So this is really a big move. So thank you for your highlight. I also noticed actually prior to the two sections, President Xi met a private business group, including Jack Ma, Wang Chuanfu, and Lei Jing, and many top-notch China entrepreneurs. That's a big also confidence boost. And also Jin Li, you know that Professor Jin, you know that President Xi also met representative from science, technology, and education community during the two sections. So I'd like to have Professor Jin Li to give me some, your takeaway. I know that you are also a member of the National Committee of the CPPCC, and of course Vice President, Southern University of Science and Technology, and also Director UNESCO Yi-Chun, and Independent Director of, and also External Director for quite a few well-known firms, including Ping An Group, TCL Group, SF Express, and Higher Venture Capital. So you know business quite well because you are sitting on a number of private business boards. So what's your takeaway, Jin Li, my friend? Yeah.
Thank you, Henry. Well, I'm a I would say I'm a student of Ding Bai. He's my mentor. And John here is my senior colleague. I taught at Harvard for about 11 years before moving to Oxford to be a full professor in finance. I was trained at MIT as a financial economist. So Henry's question, I think, resonates with me quite a bit. I prepared a note, but not for this question that you were asking, but that's fine. So my impression for this session, this is actually my 8th time to attend the meeting. I was I'm now in my 2nd term. I was elected a member of the CPPCC in 2018. So first of all, I noticed a bit of a continuity in the policy over the 8 years that I've been in the meetings. Unlike Ding Bai, I'm very positively encouraged by the concrete policy proposals that's mentioned in the meeting to more aggressively reform and open up the market to boost consumption. And as Hui Yao, or Henry we call, mentioned, to increase the confidence of private sector business people whom I interact on a daily basis, as I am also the dean of the business school in my university. So I would say, Hui Yao mentioned 2 things that resonates with me quite a bit. One is the breakthroughs in science and technology, and the other one is protection of the private sector business and the business spirit, the entrepreneurial spirit in China. And you mentioned this meeting, this very important meeting before the 2 sessions. The General Secretary met with a bunch of private sector business people. Some came from my part of the country, from Shenzhen, like the leader of Huawei and the leader of BYD. And also some very young people from Hangzhou, Wang Xingxing. And I talked extensively with one member who appeared in that conference and also gave a small speech, Liu Yonghao. Mr. Liu is the chairman of a New Hope group in Chinese Xinxivang Jituan. He is in the same small group of the CPPCC as I am. He said that all the people attending the meeting, they received this very strong positive signal that China is going to embrace entrepreneurship, embrace the private sector business, and also encourage more scientific breakthroughs that Ding Bai also was mentioning, and use it as the means to develop this new quality productive forces to enhance the quality of economic growth in China. So I think many of the observers of the Chinese economy would probably think that China has done a good job so far in encouraging science and technological breakthroughs. That's also my opinion. I taught at Harvard for more than a decade, and then Oxford for a while, and then at Peking University for about 10 years before moving to my current university. So I think I'm qualified to make an international comparison. Just before the 2 sessions, I went back to Boston because my family is still in Boston, and I visited a bunch of my former colleagues and friends who are still employed by Harvard or MIT. And a lot of these people are worried that there's going to be a cut in the expenditures on basic scientific research. In China, I think the number of the percentage spent on these basic or foundational research has been steadily increasing over time, exemplifying the government's determinants to really boost the level of breakthrough research, and then because that's going to spill over to all sectors of China, allowing more breakthroughs by productive forces like the ones that I mentioned: Huawei, DJI, BYD, or Tencent or TCL. As Henry was just mentioning, I'm fortunate to be friends with many of these firms' leaders and sits on some of the boards of these companies. And so once I go back to Shenzhen, I would definitely have more discussions with them. But my, early, conversation with them indicate that they are all very encouraged by these, positive signals that's sent through this two sessions meetings, that the country, the central government, is going to keep, boosting research against the tide of, a retraction, almost like from some other parts of the world. And we're going to also hope to attract more talents. People my ranks, senior, who have already been at the level of full professor at least in top universities around the world, to come back to China to serve the Chinese economy. And I think these measures, along with the measures to boost domestic consumption that Ding Bai was talking quite a bit, I think combined, I'm very confident that the Chinese economy is on the trajectory of a, stabilizing and achieving, more and more, good outcomes in the years to come. I also want to mention about the 5% target that the government set. I heard quite a bit of my friends, especially from outside of China, saying, well, that's going to be quite a stretch. I personally think it's achievable, but with a lot of work. I think it's going to be harder than last year. Last year, after a lot of work, we achieved 5% growth. This year, we are facing more international turbulence with more uncertainties. And also at the same time, the base has been higher. We have already been a stronger, a bigger economy. Each year, 5% growth, that's almost like the size of a mid-sized economy, overall GDP. With these challenges, it's going to be harder. But I think with all the measures that's mentioned during the two-session meetings, I'm very confident that in the end, we will see a very good outcome, achieving these goals. So let me stop here.
Great. Thank you, Lee. Excellent. You talk about a business sector, talk about science, technology, also talent, return and things like that. I think that with the DeepSeek, that ushering a second wave of talent coming back to start AI business, because in the U.S. 30-40% AI talent coming from China. So I'm sure now they are seeing the success stories. There are going to be more entrepreneurs. I just noticed in Hangzhou there's a real estate, because there's 6 AI companies. The real estate auction, they got exceeding the bidding price. They was actually quite good for that. So thank you for your sharing on that. Now, after we hear the two CPPCC members, I'd like to hear our NPC deputy, maybe, just to have all the summary of the conference. So I would like to have Professor Tian Xuan. He's a delegate of 14th National People's Congress and the Dean of National Financial Research at Tsinghua University. So I know you are also a Changjiang Scholar, a distinguished professor, and also a member of the 9th Expert Advisory Committee of Management Science, Department of National Science Foundation of China. So, Professor Tian, as an NPC member, what's your takeaway from delegate point of view?
Okay, thanks, Yao Hui. I think my major takeaway is that I'm encouraged. Well, as the Ding Bai and President Jin said, we have a very ambitious target. The GDP target is set to be around 5%, the same as the last 2 years. However, we have a much larger economic volume, so another 5% of increase is certainly very challenging, but I guess it's achievable. And as we already observed, actually, in the government work report, Prime Minister Li Qiang had announced a couple of policies, especially the fiscal policies. We called it more proactive fiscal policies. In terms of, we increased the deficit ratio to around 4%, which is certainly crossed the invisible red line of 3%. As many of you may already know, there is an invisible red line of 3% in China's deficit ratio. Except to 2020, when the global pandemic occurred, we have always have deficit ratio under 3%. So this year we increased the deficit by 1.6 trillion yuan. And we are going to issue another ultra-long special treasury bond of 1.3 trillion yuan. And long-term treasury bond of 0.5 trillion yuan, and also local government special bonds of 4.4 trillion yuan. So the total debt, the total government debt is going to be 11.86 trillion yuan, which is historically higher, 2.9 trillion yuan higher than last year. So we have very strong fiscal policy. In other words, the government is going to increase their leverage, especially the central government. And we are going to increase the government spending to do some sort of, we call it, some national strategic projects and 2 new initiatives. In terms of monetary policy, we are going to have so-called moderately loose monetary policy, which my understanding is going to be a more aggressive monetary policy, which is going to be announced later by the People's Bank of China. In other words, I think my expectation is that we are going to have another maybe interest rate reduction by 50 points, basis points, and a reduction of the reservation ratio of around 80 to 100 basis points, something like that, to provide more liquidity to the markets, stock market, capital markets, and reduce the financial burdens, financial costs of households and the companies. So I guess these are very strong policies, very powerful policies to help us to achieve this 5% of economic goals. So I'm very encouraged. Some other things I would like to say is, by reading this year's government work report, I observe some new formulations or expressions. I have a cheat sheet here. So let me tell you, it's very interesting. For example, it says investment in people versus investment in things in the past years. So this time is the very first time the Prime Minister Li Qiang mentions in his government work report that we are going to investment in people. My understanding is that investment in people the meaning is twofold. One, we are going to invest in improving people's living standards, livelihood, right? To make people, have their higher standards of livings by improving the healthcare, social security, housing, education, and enhance employment rate. Another thing is to invest in human capital. Under the age of AI, as the last 3 sort of revolution, technological revolutions, a lot of jobs are going to be destroyed, going to be replaced. But the new jobs, new positions are going to be created. So I guess the investment in people means we are going to sort of enhance our human capital under the new coming age of the AI. The second new expression is when he talked about the policy implication, he said, the earlier the better, better than the later, which means we are going to look forward to have the policies ready or the solutions ready before the problems come up. And he also said once the policies decide, we should give all the policies, all the support at once. In other words, we are not going to sort of gradually announce these policies as we did before. So in other words, we are going to have some, policies which is not at the expectation of the markets. The third is to addressing evolutionary computation, which is a new word in China. I don't know if you have an idea of evolutionary computation. I think there are 2 layers. One is the computation, evolutionary computation among governments. The other is among companies. We are going to do it to avoid the bad equilibrium in the world that in terms of that that everybody try to reduce their prices. Everybody do not have very zero profit margin, have very low profit margin. And that's a bad equilibrium. We are going to do something to address this evolutionary computation. The last thing is we are going to build good horses. Good horses means safe, comfortable, green, and smart horses. This is also a new expression this year in the government work report. I guess it's these new good horses not only to provide comfortable, safe places for people to live, it also need to be green, right? Sort of to save energy and also smart with the technological innovation of AI. The last thing I would like to mention is about private sector. Actually, Ding Bai and President Li mentioned it a little bit. This year I observed there is almost the whole paragraph in the government work report addressing the talk about the private sector to encourage the private sector. These entrepreneurs sort of confidence in terms of, for example, in terms of financial market access and financial credit access. We need to have the equal opportunities for both SOEs and non-SOEs. We are going to provide more legal protections to these private sector entrepreneurs. And we are also going to develop the rule of the law. Another thing is actually observed is about to build a better the relationship between government and the markets. In other words, government is going to, transfer from a market participants to the rule maintainers. Actually this year, during the Spring Festival holidays, the DeepSeek searched, and everybody actually, the major cities in China, they asked themselves, why DeepSeek happened, is in Hangzhou? Why not in Shenzhen? Why not in Nanjing? Why not in Beijing or something like that? I guess one of the main reasons is the good government, the service type of the governance provided by Hangzhou government to sort of, do not, their basic idea is to do not bother if nothing important happens, but be responsive to requests from these private sector enterprises. So that's pretty much what I would like to say.
Great, thank you, thank you, Professor Tan. So absolutely. I mean, you have discovered a lot of new terms and new jargons and policy interpretations for these very meaningful conferences. I think exactly. That's you talk about how comfortable housing. That's really what we need to do to be more green and more clean. And so that's one of the many things. Quite impressive. I know also, of course, with the domestic, policy setting in motion, but then we have a very, turbulent international, situation. So we have, President Trump now in office for almost 50-some days. There's still 15 days to go for the, 20 days to go for TikTok to be decided. But also, there's a lot of tariff and trade war and against not only China but around the world. So I'd like to have Professor John Crouch. You are the executive vice chancellor at Duke Queensland University, and of course you are the John Diplomats Professor of the Practice. You receive, I know, marketing for a better world from the American Marketing Chamber of Commerce many years ago, but also you taught at Harvard, at the China European Business School, so you're very savvy of this trade affections on China. So can you talk a bit about what it's going to mean on this U.S.-China, being American yourself too? So that would be interesting to hear.
Thank you very much, Henry, and appreciate the invitation from CCG to be a member of this esteemed panel. As the only American, I think, in the room, I'm relieved that the ambassador for Denmark is not here, since President Trump reasserted his claim overnight with the help of the Secretary General of NATO, no less, by his side, trying to draw him into the fray. So I think I might just spend a minute trying to not apologize for or explain, but try to give you some insight into why President Trump thinks this strategy is a good strategy. Number one, the United States international trade as a percentage of GDP is low. It's only about 25% of GDP. China, huge country as well, international trade is 35% of GDP. For most of you in the room, especially from Europe, international trade is 80, 90% sometimes of GDP, sometimes even 100 or more. So President Trump feels the United States economy is relatively self-sufficient and believes that if there's an all-out trade war, doesn't really matter if it's a zero-sum game, it doesn't matter if global prosperity is hurt. United States, if there's a global recession, is going to come out relatively better than anyone else. The second key point is that with respect to the trade deficit with China, it is, of course, a very, very large deficit still, even though the percentage of international trade of China with the US and US with China has gone down a little bit in recent years as a result of some efforts at decoupling. And by the way, that's not such a bad thing for the overall balance in the global economy, for there not to be this very, very heavy mutual dependency of two large countries. It would be nice if international trade was spread around a little bit more. But given the very large deficit that the US runs with China, the belief of President Trump is that he can out-tariff China. In other words, he can inflict more pain on China than China can inflict on him. And a final point I would make is you might think that Trump 1.0, they would have learned their lesson, that tariff war doesn't really work. Instead of learning that lesson, the lesson they learned was we didn't inflict enough pain. We didn't push it hard enough. And so brace yourselves, because I don't think it's over. And unless something really untoward happens, for these reasons, I believe the US is going all out to reset the equation with China. And that's the fundamental purpose of this whole thing. Canada and Mexico, that's kind of a warm-up. That's just getting things warmed up. And, you know, making it an making Trump tariffs an equal opportunity employer, if you like. So I would say, you know, there's a lot that's going to happen vis-a-vis US and China still to come. I hope not. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm just giving you my impression from a US point of view. Now, very briefly, what could China do? What has China done? Of course, many Chinese companies loaded up inventory into the US ahead of the tariff war, so in many industries, there's 6 months worth of supply in warehouses already shipped into the United States. As we've already heard, China can double down on domestic consumption. China has been, since Trump 1.0, making great outreach to the global south. Pretty much every week, President Xi Jinping receives one of your heads of state, and a nice picture appears on the front page of China Daily. It would take the head of state of most of the countries in this room a tremendous amount of effort to get an audience in the White House. You might, at the moment, you might get to see the Deputy Assistant Undersecretary, if you're lucky. But China is understanding that, reaching out very intelligently across the board. Any country, large or small, doesn't matter. So that global south outreach is very important. But the final thing I'll say is, in a recession or in a difficult time, doubling down on innovation is the absolute way to go. If you have the capital available, you double down on innovation when times are tough. When everybody else is short of capital, they're running for the exits, they're too scared, they're not willing to take risk, that's the time to take the risk. And so what we see regarding innovation, I think, is a very important message coming out of the two sessions. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, John, for those sober advices. Absolutely. I mean, now you see doubling down on innovation. That's what exactly China is doing, for example, at DeepSeek and many, many more. And of course, also we see the trade, actually. U.S. counts about 10% of China's trade now, and China trades more. 70% with Belt and Road countries, the Global South countries, in addition to G7 now, actually. So you can see if the U.S. is trying to wage a war against everybody, all the rest of the world and China would trade more among themselves. So probably this is the situation to go. So I think you're right. We have to be prepared after the two sections of this turbulent, still more to come, global environment. Now, last but not least, I'd like to invite Dr. Tang Min. He's a vice president of the CCG, but also a former counsel of China State Council, and also former vice secretary general of China Development Research Foundation, and a former senior economist of Asian Development Bank. And so, Dr. Tan, so what's your take? I know you've been involved in AI, in the rural, innovation, and many things. And of course, with think tanks with us, we'd like to hear from you as a last sharing.
Thank you. I was told I give the most easy assignment and most difficult assignment, because asked me to discuss about agriculture and rural and farmers. And that's easy because in terms of economic term, this whole thing is only 7% GDP. So it's not much, right? But it's more difficult because that's relatively poor people always in the rural area. Though we only produce 7% GDP, but we do have more than 35% of population in there. So this is a more difficult area. That's why government always pay much attention in this work called the rural, agricultural, rural, and the farmers issue, right? Now, performance last year not that bad. Agriculture growth 3.5%, 3% lower than 5% GDP growth. So agriculture there, but the average income and rural population resident grows by 6.8%, higher than those people stay in urban area. Why is that? If your agriculture grows only 3.5, but your income more than doubled, about doubled. Why is that? Because in the rural area, around 60% of income actually does not really come from agricultural sector. They're working in the local industries, or they're working as a rural migrants. They come in, send money back, and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, at the rural growth, the concept is rural income goes a little bit high, at about 1% higher than the urban resident average growth last year. Now, in this new policy, what is the new policy to addressing this most difficult area and most important area in China? And in my view, mainly two things. Number one, we continue to promote food safety. That means we have to produce more grains. Why? Because China still import a lot of grains, about 130 1,000 tons or whatever. It's quite a big percentage. And we know the international situation quite disturbing, right? And Chinese government always worried if we do not have enough food, which in the Chinese history, we do have many years, we will have starvations, we have problems. And if we too much depend on world market, also China import is a larger proportion of world grains productions trade. So this is why increase. So this year, we suppose further increase of grain production. So far, every Chinese on average like 500 kilos grains will produce 500 kilos grains, which is okay, but still about half of United States and even lower than Brazil, other things. But China have a big populations, 500 kilos grains, and we want to increase a little bit more. Because you know that too much depend on weather, fertilizer, all the factors. But how China promote, what's the government promote? Number one is what we call the high quality. We promote the high quality of agricultural farmlands. The government pay money because we have a lot of farmlands which may not have a good situation. So government give the money to upgrading the farmlands, make it a bigger or a small piece, or make it bigger if it's too much layers, and make it flat and all things. And this year we are planning for quite like 8,000. What is the number? I forgot the number. Anyway, government put the money there. Secondly, why we're producing, actually China still have potential to produce more grains, but from the farmers have a less incentive to put their efforts on that. Why? Because the grains price so low, and people working the whole year is not getting much money from the agriculture for farm productions. That's why 60% of farmers' income have to come from outside of a farm. And why? Because our price so low. And why price so low? Because our grains price really related to the international price. International more productive, and China have an average less land. So that's why our competitions, the price is very low, and farmers do not get much income from that. So this year, we create a new idea, and this policy called the cross-region compensation mechanism. For example, like Guangdong, Canton, or Zhejiang, or the coastal area, they produce some grains, but not much, so they import a lot. And for those agriculture like Henan and Northeast, and all those Jilin, they produce lots of grains for the food security, for national security, but they did not get much income. Government did have some subsidy before, but because of WHO and also financial constraints, they do not have much money to subsidize for that. So what happened? They would create that new idea, say like, let those provinces which their grains production less than what the consumption, they should pay. That means they have to import from abroad, also from Henan, from all the grain production area, and they should subsidize all that. So this is called the cross-regional compensation mechanism. They will try. Last year they tried in Henan, one county, which quite getting more incentive. That county of production increase like more than 10%, income increase of 15% and so on. So this year we will enlarge about this new mechanism. So this is one thing, right? Produce more for food security. And second, is also important, is how can faster growth of farmers' income, because agriculture in the rural area, we still have a 450 million population in rural area. How can increase their income? So that's, again, we have to create more job, and which is related to the job, more rural migrants to the urban area, because every year, rural population lost about 12 to 13 million. 12 or 13 million from the rural area, they move to urban area and find a job, and they're getting more income for that. So that creates more job opportunities, though you know how difficult it is to create job opportunities. But surprisingly, it's more difficult to get a job opportunity is the high-end type, like a cultural graduate. They get difficult to getting a job. But for the low-end job, nowadays it's not that difficult. Actually, we do have a little labor shortage. If you go to a restaurant, you always like a helper wanted, because the low end, they still have a job opportunity for that. So this increase, and also we increase the pension, increase it not much, increase the rural pension, because rural area, we have this what called the aging issue. Because all the young people moving out to the urban area, rural area, all like 50, 60, 70, 80 years old people, right? And so we have to increase the pension system. Not much. Nationwide, every month, central government will provide $3 more, $3 per month. That means 20 yuan, around $3, right? Seems looks not much, but the local government, the provincial government, and the municipal government, and the county government have to also pay some of them. Many times the local government pay more pension increase than the central government. But anyway, that's another measure, and also many others, and promote the economic faster growth, and blah, blah, blah. So hopefully this year, and agricultural production at least maintain, if the weather is not a big disasters, right, and maintain current level of food grain production, and maybe a little more, government policies a little more. And secondly, and rural income still maintain this growth a little bit faster than the urban income, though our gap is quite high. Currently, the gap between rural income, average urban income is 2.3 times. That means urban people average get an income as 2.3 times higher than rural. And in United States and Australia, almost 1-to-1, because there's that different type of farmer. China is a 2.3, still a little bit lower than Brazil. Brazil is around 3. China, if 10 years ago, is around 2.8 and 2.9. Now it's already reduced to 2.4, 2.3. But we would like to continue. If the rural income grows faster than average urban income, that means the gap will gradually reduce. But it's quite slow, and we still need next 1 decade, 2 decades to make up this gap. But at least we saw this improvement. Thank you.
Okay, great. So thank you for covering the rural area, which is also very important for China as well. So we just had this round of a major presentation. I'd like to open the floor now, and if you have any questions, comment, and would like to introduce yourself and raise your hand, and we can have some dialogue and discussions. We still have 20-30 minutes, and so any questions, comment? We have to have one of the ambassadors to raise. Maybe a role, yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I'm the ambassador of Luxembourg, First of all, thank you very much, Henry and Mabel, for bringing us together again in this very insightful discussion round. And thank you, distinguished scholars, for your evaluation. Maybe two questions, if you like. I was taken a little bit by surprise, Henry, but nonetheless. Obviously, as you may know, household consumption is a major interest where we are looking at. So you explained to us very interestingly, and I fully agree with your analysis, that the levers to boost household consumption are not very many, and it's very difficult. Huh? And you refer to some of them. So my question would be, in addition to that, particularly for structural levers to boost household consumption, which one would you as a scholar still see? Because I think what we see in there, and I don't know if you agree with me, but at least this is my analysis that I sent back to headquarters, that we see a start of a timid use of structural levers in boosting household consumption, which I think is a very positive sign, but it's a beginning. And my question would be, what could be additional levers to continue that and to add on top of that? And then, if you may allow, another issue which I think is important to us as envoys of, in particular, European countries. Obviously, we look at trade surpluses, in particular with the European Union, with some worrying signs. And I think the figures do not tell us everything. There is the chairman of the European Union Chamber of Commerce in China, who is by chance the boss of Maersk, a container company in China, so he knows a lot about container trade. And so he uses another metrics, which is looking at the amount of container trade between. And it seems that there, the relation went up from the 2023 to 2024, if my memory is correct, and colleagues help me, from 1 to 4 to 1.2 to 5, meaning that the surplus on the Chinese side is getting bigger and bigger. So what would be your response to that particular worry of ours, obviously, with regard to those figures? Thank you very much.
Good question. Maybe Dim Bai can give a shot first. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for those questions. I was hoping that somebody will raise those questions so that I can elaborate more. And as I said earlier, you also referenced to them. Some of the traditional levers have already been used. And I would suggest a few other areas. First of all, more spending on primary education. Right now, we provide free education from the 6th grade to the from the 1st grade to the 6th grade, age 6 to age 15. So that period of education is all provided for by the public finance. But preschool education is still not fully covered. And the burden on young households with kids going to kindergarten is still very heavy. And the cost of sending one child to kindergarten is about 10% of household disposable income. It's not a small number. So if the government can take care of that, that will be a big relief to households. And for daycare, the enrollment rate is very low. It's around 6% enrollment in daycare. OECD average is around 35%. One of the reasons is that it's very expensive. It's even more expensive than kindergartens. It's 17% of household disposable income. So if the government can provide more support there, that will be, again, another big relief on young households. And the quality of daycare. People are not sending their children to daycare, not only because the financial burden, also because they don't feel comfortable. They are worried about the quality. There, I think the government can do more to have better regulation, to have better standards for daycare. So those two things together, we don't need, we did an estimate. We only need to spend 0.32% of GDP to provide free kindergarten education, to give each household, each child a 10,000 yuan annual subsidy for daycare. That will help us to raise the 6% enrollment rate, hopefully to 30%. So those things, I think those measures will be very helpful. In the government report, it's written that we will gradually increase spending on preschool education. So I think that's a very important part. Insurances, yes, the government's fiscal spending on Social Security has already been increasing a lot, but for residents' Social Security, the level is still very low. For employment-based system, I think the quality is still is already quite good. But for residents, it's about 50% of the population. They don't enroll in the employment-based system. We have two separate systems, one for residents, the other for employed people. So more spending on insurance, social insurance for residents will be another area where we can boost consumption. And also, this may sound counterintuitive. I said that there are many levers to pull to support investment. Sometimes the local governments are doing the right thing, supporting innovation. Other times, they sort of provide too strong an incentive for investment so that you create surplus production capability. If the government can do more to support innovation, but do less to increase excess supply, that will be very good for local economy, that will be very good for the world economy as well. And then the government can save some money to divert that use of fund to support education, to health, investment in people. That's what's mentioned. So I think those things are very important. And you talked about the trade figures. Yes, especially you talked about the imbalance between container movements. Yeah, that's about the trade in merchandises, in manufactured goods. In manufactured goods, China's trade surplus is about 9% of GDP. It's very large. But we run a large deficit in services trade, in the trade of raw materials. So if you add the surplus in the manufacturing sector with the deficit in the services and raw material sector, then the overall trade surplus is around 2% of GDP. It's not an extraordinary number. It's actually a mild number. In 2007, that number used to be 9% of GDP. It dropped to 2% now. So it's, I think, in terms of overall trade balance, China has made a lot of effort, but in manufacturing, the trade surplus is still large. That's why I believe that we should. Actually, the government report calls for the local government to be more prudent in their effort to attract investment, hoping that local government will not put fuel on fire in terms of creating more access capacity. I think that will be very good for everybody.
Okay, good. Maybe I have another question from Ambassador of Indonesia. Yes, and then an Ambassador from Israel also. Yes.
Yes, Henry, thank you very much. Mabel, thank you very much as well for inviting me to come here. Let me sit. I have a few questions. Number one, if you look at the last year China economy, fourth quarter, you were able to increase the rate of growth by 5.3%. with some new policies at the fourth quarter last year, compared to first, second, and third quarter, and that makes your average rate of growth last year 5%. My question is, whether those new policies during the fourth quarter, and then now new policies coming out from the two sessions, will increase as well the growth for 2025. I saw some of the market reaction in Hong Kong, in Shenzhen, in Shanghai. It's quite positive, at least 1 to 2.3%, the market reaction of the policies coming out from the two sessions. So I follow closely as well. Even I already made a report on the innovation and domestic consumptions. But this is the interesting thing, how to accelerate the rural income to much more higher than urban income with the two strategies. Can you elaborate much more further on that? Because somehow this is the policy of my new government as well. That's why I want to know further about this policy. This is new for me. Thank you very much.
Okay, maybe we have another two questions just together. Ambassador from Israel. Yes. Collect a few more.
I think it's a question I'd like to direct to Professor Jin. Unemployment in China. We see that the figures are already relatively high now, and with the acceleration of more integration of AI technology and innovative technologies into the economy, you will be able to employ less people. And on the other hand, there's these trade issues that come up, overcapacity of production in China that will have to decline, so people will have to be laid off from their work. What is the solution to unemployment figures in China?
Good. Maybe one more question. And Ambassador from India or Italy, or two big countries.
Well, since Henry has put me on spot, just one very simple question, and I'm not a financial person. See, the general conventional wisdom is that when you are young, you take on more debt. As you grow old, you take out debt. Now, China is growing old, like we talk about silver economy. Is it a good strategy to increase more debt, as Professor Thang mentioned, that this year China is going to take more debt? Is it a good strategy?
Okay, good. Ambassador from Italy, has any question? You have any comments? No? Yeah.
Thank you very much for this very interesting conversation. I have a question on the trade surplus. I think it will not change. I feel that this is, frankly speaking, also a priority for the Chinese government. And I think that, I mean, for all the indicators that we know, manufactured goods from China will continue to be very competitive, because, of course, you have deflationary trends, and compared to the inflationary trends that we have in Western countries, and for a set of other reasons, I think your goods will continue to be very competitive in the next economic scenario. So, but this is not just about economic interaction, it's about overall strategic interaction, and also to find a new consensus to grow together. And this year, as you know, is, for instance, the 50th anniversary of the partnership with the European Union. The European Union has a very significant imbalance, trade imbalance with China. This is the same for my country, for instance. So how do you think to make it sustainable for the longer term? Because it's not just a problem of economic policy or management. This is also a political problem in a very tense, in a very challenging strategic scenario. Thank Thank you very much.
Great. I think we had a question for almost every panelist. Let's have another round starting from Professor Tan, and then we'll roll over to Tim Bai. Yeah, but briefly, yes.
Okay. I think you asked me the question. When people are young, they take more debt. When they become older, they sort of take off the debt. My answer is very simple. China is still young. We are still a very large, developing country, and our economic growth rate, like last year we had 5%, is still very high. Around, it's not as high as we had a couple of years, 20 years ago, but still we are a developing country, and we have, we take more debt to have a sort of, we call jump start of our economy. To the government, the central government takes more leverage. These increase their spending, which can, sort of stimulate the private sectors, encourage them to, increase their investment, which creates more jobs, and then more people can get employed, their income increased, and they increase their consumption, which addresses the insufficient domestic demand issue. And then we have a positive, loop, which can sort of make the Chinese economy have a stable goals. So I think I fully support. Actually, last year, I and other economists, we have a lot of discussions. We even have the discussions with top decision makers. All our suggestions were pretty much to encourage the central government to take more debt, to increase their spending, to help the companies. So far, our economy is a little bit cool. That's the fact. So we need someone, the central government, ideally, to take an initiative to have jumpstart. So I don't think we have too much debt. I think, on the contrary, we should have more debt as long as the deficit ratio is lower than the GDP growth rate. We are pretty much safe. We are not running a lot of deficit risk.
Okay, Tommy, I think the Indonesia ambassador question to you,
Okay.
Rural area.
Okay, and let me explain more about how to promote the rural income, growth of rural income. As I mentioned, number one, government put money to upgrading some of the farmlands, that the quality of a farmland become improved, the irrigations or the land or whatever. Then suppose your production will increase. Government pay for that. So this is number one. Number two is probably your production increase, but if a price down, and farmer is not necessarily getting more income. So secondly, we try to increase the procurement the price of a farm product. But how can you do that? This is you cannot force the market to increase the price. So what the government try, as I mentioned, called a cross-region compensation mechanism. That means for those regions, those provinces, if your farm cannot produce enough grants fit your own province people, you have a gap, then, and also you need to import from those grant production province, you have to pay the subsidies. So this is the second, and which I said they already tried last year, which is quite successful, but small counties, now this is expanding. Thirdly, as I mentioned, increase the pension. And fourthly, many small things. For example, in rural area, a lot of people, maybe more than 50% people is about 60, 70 years old. It's very old. They cannot really do the hard work. So what happened? They will rent out their lands to those people which can have a large scale. But if you rent out individually, you do not have a bargaining power, so you're getting very low income from rent out your lands. China do not allow to sell the land, but you can rent out 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. You can rent out. But if you're individual and you're old farmer, you're in the rural area, you cannot bargaining with those big companies. So what happened? Government encourages the village called the collectively negotiation. So let the whole village or even a little bigger, and you put all the land together, you want to rent out, okay, then let the village to negotiate with the companies, and sometimes you're getting double your price or increase 50%, and that's all the things. Of course, the most important, you have to create the urban job, because if 60% of our rural income come from non-agricultural productions, that means you have to also addressing these 60% things. You create more job and let the around the rural area more grows faster and blah, blah, blah. So this is all, some of the policy you need several years to really have a effective, right? Some immediately have some result. So hopefully next year, there was some improve, but you said a dramatic change, not easy.
Okay. So, okay, actually, Tommy, I could add one policy is that we have 300 million migrant workers in the city. They have household land in the rural area, growing grass, basically. If government is allowed that to be auctioned or sell, I mean, they are allowed rent already, but if they allow them to sell, then this 300 million migrant workers can really get first, startup capital to buy the second-hand apartment in the cities, and urban residents can go down to the rural area to buy the household land. You know, that will probably usher in another boom for China. Anyway, John, I think there's some trade question for you too. Yes.
So trade deficits are pretty much irrelevant to the economic health of individual nations or global prosperity. And it's unfortunate, therefore, that trade relations are being leveraged in this way, though perhaps they're being leveraged in this way precisely because they're really not that relevant to prosperity. What's much more important to prosperity is national productivity and innovation capacity and talent development, etc. So when it comes to, let me just say one more thing because we're running out of time on the US-China relationship. In my opinion, there is a crisis of confidence in both countries. The United States needs to be more confident that it can compete with China with one hand tied behind its back. And China needs to be more confident that it can compete with the United States on a more level playing field than it's been operating on for the last 20 years. If those two changes were to occur in the psyches of these two nations, get along much better.
Okay, great. Lee, your last word too.
Thank
question
you.
for you also. Yes.
Okay, I'll just first address the question by the lady there. I think this is going to be a big problem for China going forward. The unemployment rate, especially for university college graduates, it's a matter that draws a lot of attention. I'm an educator, and I worry about young kids' job prospects. Fortunately, my university is doing fine, but generally, I think there's a problem. Well, there are at least two problems. One is the structural one. Our education system is not producing the people, the talents that enterprises actually need. So there's a big mismatch. And it calls for reforms that Henry was mentioning before. The education system should be more aligned with the demand of the enterprises, and also, scientific breakthroughs is going to cause a lot of changes to the structure of the new type of talents that the society needs. That, I think, it's both, posing a challenge, but also an opportunity, because we can take advantage of the development in, technologies like AIs to better, reform, redesign our education system, again, to make it, fit the need of the people. And along that line, I also want to mention, this is something that related to some of the other questions that I heard here. China needs to really, find a better balance for its own input and output. It's producing a lot of goods, particularly in the manufacturing sector. We talk about overcapacity in some of the sectors. It's not only affecting China's own economic balance, but also the global trade. Part of that, I think China is not used yet to its own economic status. From the outside world, we always think of China, you're already the second largest economy. But from the inside, externally, we always think of ourselves as a developing country. It's, as Professor Tianxuan was just talking, we're still growing. We're adolescent. We're not grown up yet. We're 5% growth each year. And if you look at per capita, we're just a fraction of the standards that most of you are used to. So, give us some time. But we should understand why the outside world is more concerned about the way China is exerting more influence than it expects in the past. And therefore, it should adjust its own expectation of how the world thinks about China. And then, I would think, adjust its own production capacity and balance its economic activities, better balance the demand and the supply domestically. In other words, China is now a big economy. It's a quickly growing economy. So it has the capacity to balance its own domestic economy and therefore exert less of a, I would say, disruption is a strong word, but imbalance to the rest of the world. Maybe I should say, China is grown up, so it should think of itself as a grown up. But I would say also that these kind of adjustments should be, moderate, should be slow, or else it's going to cause a huge amount of repercussion to everybody, including China itself, but also including the rest of the world. Just take Europe, for example. We talk about the trade surplus, and as Dean Bai was mentioning, if you take together the goods and the service, the overall balance has been radically reduced over the last 10 years or so. But if it's more radical, I fear that not only it's going to cause more employment problems for China, but also it's going to cause inflation problem for many other trading partners. So I think allow some time for China to adjust. It's moving in the right direction, in my opinion. China is behaving more like the rest of our developed world. So I'm very hopeful, optimistic about the future. I'll stop here.
Okay, great. Lee, now I have Dean Bai for the last word as well. Good.
It seems that all the questions have been answered, but still I would like to elaborate a little bit. I very much like what Professor Jin emphasized, that there should be more balance in the Chinese economy that will help create a lot of employment. I will just give you one example. In China, there is only one nurse for every doctor. Worldwide, it's one doctor, 4 nurses. There are structural reasons why it's the case in China, because hospitals are sort of public entities, so there are strong, very tight regulation on employment in public hospitals. If we reach the target of 1 doctor, 4 nurses, that will be immediately 15 million jobs. So there is overcapacity in some of the manufacturing sector. There is huge undercapacity in many of the services sectors. So there are ample opportunities for employment creation just in the right area. So that's just one example there. And about debt, that's a very good question. And in the long run, we should be very careful about the debt. But in the short run, the economy was in a slump, and we need to do some stimulus to boost the economy so that it comes back to the normal track. So in the short run, boosting debt is not a bad idea. Also, in the numbers, a lot of it is replacing old debt with new debt. Local government borrowed from many different sources. They owe their suppliers, for example. Now the central government allow them to issue more bond so that they can pay back the debt they owe to the vendors. It's not increasing debt, rather it's changing the structure of debt in a better way. So that's my take on that. About trade. And there is this tendency of viewing trade as zero-sum. I don't think it is. The fact that people are trading, it must be that they mutually benefit one another. Let me give you one example. For example, Europe. Energy cost is a drag on the competitiveness of European economies. Can China and Europe and Africa work together to not only make energy supply greener, also more efficient and cheaper? I believe there is a way. If the three parties come together and build solar power farms in Africa and use water power in Africa to smooth the electricity supply and sell it to Europe, it will make the world greener. It will help Africa develop. It will reduce the cost of energy in Europe. It gives Chinese supplier a market. I don't think it's a zero sum. It's a huge positive sum game, except that people say, well, that will make Europe more reliant on China for its energy supply. It's not secure. But I don't think it makes a lot of sense. Once the solar electricity farm is built, China has no control over it. There is no security issue. It's not the supply of gas. When you cut off the supply of gas, your storage doesn't last very long. But the solar batteries, they last for 30 years. So once it's installed, it's already there. There's no security issue. So there's all these mongering about make us less reliant on the Chinese economy to be more secure. It should be more carefully considered.
Great point. Actually, I echo what Ding Bai was saying. Another word, actually, probably we didn't talk about is this in two sections. There's offshore business. The first time mentioned, Chinese offshore business, which means that a lot of Chinese companies now doing this, setting up factories, export, import, in different countries, forced by this, tariff or trade war, and going global ahead of schedule, which is also good because providing employment for local community and creating jobs there, and also generating income, but also Chinese company benefit, and that number is not counted. But I think you are right. Having this solar farm in Africa and helping Europe could be the way to go. So I think this is really important that we have a lot of ideas talk about today, and we analyze the two sections. We interpret what's the latest policy thinking from China, and we have the 5 top experts on that. So this is really productive. We have almost 20 ambassadors, many 30-some countries represented are here, and chambers, international organizations. We have quite a few international organizations represented, and media, and also we have people from different government offices as well. So it's really a great pleasure for CCG to, at the beginning of this year, to provide this kind of debriefing and policy, analyzing, and we're going to put it on also on the website to for further, to other more audience to benefit from it. So on that note, I would like to conclude the lunch we have. Probably we haven't really, our panelists hasn't really got much to eat, but we'd like to take a photo to memorize this very distinguished panel, and also our distinguished ambassadors and all the participants. So let's take a photo, and then we'll continue the coffee, tea, and dialogue, whatever. So thank you. Let's thank our panelists very much.